Happy Tuesday, besties and bosses. How y'all doing? How's your summer going? Let me just pull this up in the group because otherwise I don't see the comments while we're live. If you're joining us, because it always takes me a moment to see that, but I am very excited for our conversation today. I had to check out with you too. I'm pulling this up. I just finished lunch and I mentioned this on Threads. I also want to know who's on Threads. I think I lasted for about 5 days and haven't commented on there since. I'm not good at small talk apparently, but I was having a lot of fun on it for a moment there. But you'll have to let me know if y'all are on Threads or not. But I posted this on Threads a couple days ago. So I just made lunch and I made the same thing I made for breakfast for lunch because I make these protein pancakes that I'm obsessed with. Does anybody else do that where you're like, this is so good, I just need to have it all over again? That is me. That is what I just did. So I was laughing with my husband. I'm like, I don't know if this is actually that healthy that I'm having the same thing for 2 meals, but we're going with it. It made me happy. And so I am full of protein pancakes for our conversation today on all good things content. So before we dive in, a couple announcements. If you are live, comment, leave me an emoji, say hi, let me know you're here. You will be entered to win a copy of my self-study course, Content That Stands Out and Sells. It's a 5-part self-study mini course. All you gotta do is leave me a comment. We will pick someone who's live. Of course, I know most of you watch on the replay, and I love that you watch on the replay, and leave me comments, questions if you do, but I love getting to hang out with y'all live, and I like getting to encourage that and reward that. So if you're here and you just leave me a comment, we will make sure you are entered to win that, and we'll pick someone and get free access to that. Other thing to announce, I'll remind you all at the end of our conversation, but we're talking content today. Next Tuesday, we're going to have a masterclass. It'll be about 90 minutes called Strategic Stories That Sell. We're going to take our content conversation today to the next level. I know you know about storytelling, and I think most of you understand what storytelling is, but what I've really seen is how having a strategic form of storytelling in your content really boosts your reach, your visibility. It really creates your brand awareness, and it helps to build the know, like, and trust, really get you known so people understand why to hire you and pay you. I've been testing this in my own business. I had ChatGPT do the math for me. It was like a 13% increase on one of my posts and an over 500% general increase in our reach just by leveraging this kind of strategic storytelling. This is something I created. It's based on a lot of different things, but overall, what I've seen work in my business through my clients' business, but also what I've really seen work in the TV and film industry and how they strategically use storytelling to sell. So that's what I'm going to be teaching next week. If you sign up, you will get access to the bonus playbook and enter to win a free coaching session. Y'all know I love giving free coaching sessions, but I'm very fully booked. So this is the way I can still give one of those away. We'll pick one winner for that. So at the end of our class, I will drop a link for that. But if you scroll to the top of the group and click the banner, you can also get that link to sign up. That is next Tuesday. I'm really looking forward to that. Hey Keith, nice to have you here. Nice to see you here. I'm always loving to know who's here. So today we are talking content and 5 shifts, and we're talking small shifts that can help your content to stand out and to connect and sell more in 2023. The reason I wanted to bring this conversation, it's going to prep us for our masterclass next week, but couple thoughts come up here to prep this conversation. First and foremost, if you are showing up and sharing content, original content, this is a conversation where I want to say, I see you, I celebrate you. I've been sharing content every day for over 7.5 years in my business. And I know what goes into that. So none of this conversation is to say, like, here are the things you're doing wrong, but I know how much work and effort goes into creating content. I know there's a lot that gets poured into it. And what I've really seen over the last 3 years, and specifically this year, are some of the things that we're converting with a lot more ease 1 year, 2 year, 3 years ago just aren't in the same way. And it can feel really frustrating when you're putting a lot of effort into your content. Because I know if you're here, you put thought, you put effort into it. It takes time, whether it's your time or your team's time. Even if you're using ChatGPT is great, but even if you're using that, you're still giving it prompts. It's still taking time and energy to make that work for you. And it can be really frustrating then when you feel like you're doing a lot of work in your content and you're not getting the payoff on the other side. So I'm just gonna talk through a couple of things. These are not like super duper secrets. These are shifts you can make, but I would invite you to just check in with and see if your content isn't getting the reach you want, the attention you want, the conversions you want. Are one of these 5 things maybe something you could take a look at? These are literally things I'm supporting my clients with every day, and clients at every stage. This isn't just like brand new business owners. I'm talking multi 6, 7 figure business owners. These are the things we're revisiting because our landscape is just a little bit different in 2023 than it was definitely 10 years ago, but even a couple years ago. The big thing, we've talked about this in so many different ways on our live streams, but just in case you're joining me today for the first time, I think just a really big thing to remember is we had a huge surge in 2020 when we went on lockdown in the online space, and that was great. Great for us as an online space and industry, great that we had a place to be when everyone was on lockdown, but it brought a lot of saturation and it brought more demand, but it brought supply demand basically shifted. So a lot of businesses really thrived in 2020. What's happening now is we're seeing it's a buyer's market. There is more supply than there is demand. And with that, we also just have more saturation and more people who are in any given industry, any given niche. It's not a bad thing. There's more than enough to go around. My clients are still thriving. I'm still thriving. I want to be a voice for that. But I do think it means that the landscape has just shifted a little bit, and we have to think like strategic business owners who are no longer in a seller's market. In 2020, we were in a seller's market. So it was a lot easier to maybe take someone's template and modify it a little bit and put something out there. It was a little bit easier to throw some content out there and have it convert at a higher level, and maybe not to have to put as much work or thought into it. It was a little easier to be more generic and still see results off the back end because it was a seller's market. What I think about is I live in New York City, and when I moved to New York City almost 10 years ago and I went to rent an apartment, it was a seller's market. And oh my goodness, you would look at apartments, and this is not an exaggeration. I came to New York City with a binder of my finances. I mean, I'm a little extra because I always like want to get what I want to get and I want to make sure it happens, but I came with a binder of my finances. And when you saw an apartment, you needed to be the first person who said, I want in, like upon seeing that place, because otherwise there were 25 people behind you who would put money in sight unseen. In fact, I sent money before I even came to New York for an apartment just so I could have a place secured by putting in a deposit. And then you have to prove you make something like 70 to 80 times the rent in revenue. I moved to New York City without a job, so I literally had to pay a year's rent up front to be able to secure a place to live. So that was a seller's market. During COVID, it was a buyer's market for renters. And the neighborhood I moved to, we moved into a beautiful new apartment, like loft apartment, my dream apartment in New York City. When I first moved here, it was like maybe one apartment would pop up, and it was like, you better jump on that and you better have all the credentials. And I mean, I had 3 letters of reference for that first apartment that I paid a year's rent up front. Like that is what a seller's market is. During COVID, when we moved here, it was like there were 20, I don't know if there were 20, but there were 10 apartments available. There was a lot more option, and they were giving incentives left and right. You could get a month free. I mean, there were all of these different incentives being given because it was no longer a seller's market. It was a buyer's market. So people who were renting or selling apartments had to change their marketing strategy because they didn't have a line out the door of people who are just saying, take my money, I don't care because this is the only option. And that's just what we're seeing in the online space. That will ebb and flow as industries do, but I think it's just helpful to understand that, because otherwise what I see through clients is we start to create this story that, oh my gosh, I'm doing something wrong. My content doesn't work, content marketing doesn't work, marketing doesn't work, online doesn't work. There's something wrong with me. People don't like my offer. This converted in 2020. This opt-in converted. This masterclass converted. This piece of content converted. Why isn't it working now? And I want to offer that it might not be any of those stories your brain wants to hand you. It might simply be that we're just in a different time and space, and that will ebb and flow over the years. It's just helpful to be aware of that, so you can just be aware of how to approach that. And then what that means for our content is it's just an opportunity for all of us to step up our game, sort of like the buying homes in New York City, right? If it's a seller's market, I don't know, you don't have to update your kitchen, you don't have to do a lot. It's just like there are a whole bunch of people who will come buy your home. It's probably a seller's market again in the real estate industry here. I'm not looking, but I know it's been pretty popping everywhere, right? So you don't have to do as many updates, but if you're on the buying side, you need to be the one who's like chasing after that, and vice versa. So I think just seeing that's the space. We're just seeing those differences in our space, and we just want to adjust accordingly. And that isn't to make yourself wrong, your business wrong, or your content wrong. And I'm going to keep saying this. If you're showing up and sharing content, you're already doing so much right. Give yourself such a huge pat on the back. It is so easy to not. It's so easy to make excuses. And content still works. Content is still, even if you're paying for ads, your content is probably a big portion of what is supporting those ads and the back end of your funnels. When you're running ads to them, content is what has built my business and built I have a booked out multi-six-figure business. We make $350K plus a year from one-on-one alone. Content is the whole foundation of what has supported that and continues to. So I want to be such a voice for content, because I know I hear from newer business owners all the time. They're like, I've lost it, or I've lost the moment. There's no more room for content. There's no more room for this. And I think that's just simply not true at all. I think there's just opportunities for all of us to step our game up and to be a little more strategic. Again, we're going to talk small shifts, and these are also practical foundational principles in business that I think are just helpful to review anyway when it comes to your content. So I've got 5 of those that we're going to go through, but I hope that's helpful just to understand a little bit more in terms of what's going on in our space and why your content that might have, like your content strategy that might have just been killing it a couple of years ago might just be having slightly different results today, or slightly different reach today. And as we're going through this, if you have questions, reflections, I love those. So throw them at me and let me know what comes up for you. Let me pull up my notes. Oh, hey Cassie, nice to see you. I always get the comments late. Nice to have you here. Let me know as well if you have questions on this. So the first offer here for how to shift your content in 2023 is really something we should always be doing with our content. So a lot of these are going to be tried and true. This isn't like some gimmicky thing where it's like do reels in 2023 or you need to be on Threads. You do you if you want to do reels, if you want to be on Threads, but every platform works. I'm not here to tell you which platform to be on. I really want to bring us back to business foundations, the principles that are always going to work, but the ones we really want to revisit. And this is what I've been revisiting with clients at every stage of business. And I say that because this is one of those like super basic bitch things in business where it's like, really, Kim, that's what we're talking about. But this is what I'm looking at with clients who are making multi-6, 700K a year, 800K a year, $1 million plus, $2 million plus in their business. We're revisiting this right now because it's important and it's easy to lose sight of. And that is really revisiting your audience and your ideal clients and specifically their needs as it relates to what it is you sell. So I think the longer you are in business, actually the more challenging this is in your content. For my clients who are newer in business, it's like they know to do this. This is like part of building your business. And so they're usually a lot closer to their ideal clients and knowing their ideal clients' pain points and their audience, what their audience is really craving, what their audience really needs. And they're in that. They're usually also a little bit closer to who their ideal client is. So sometimes this is a little bit easier for them. But if you've been in business for years, if you've created some success, if you're maybe just at a place where you're coasting a little bit, or it's just been a second since you've revisited this, a couple things happen and it can start to affect your content. One thing is you can start to grow further and further away from who your ideal client is, because a lot of people build their businesses around they're a couple steps ahead of their ideal client, which is great. But I'll use myself for example. I've been in business for 7.5 years, and many of my ideal clients make more money than me. I'm not necessarily my ideal client, but in many ways I am. But if I were basing my ideal client on who I was a couple steps ahead of, so to say, in business 7.5 years ago, and I never revisited who my ideal client was, what their needs are, and I'm 7.5 years into business, you could see what a disconnect there would be now 7.5 years later. I have a team of 5. I make great money in business. I'm in a very different place. I have very different challenges. I have different problems, right? Not better or worse. They're just very different places. It would be very hard for me to connect in the same way. And I think this is why we just want to remember to revisit this. Similarly, what I find for a lot of my clients is their audience changes and grows along with them. And so sometimes they're really great at still speaking to that ideal client of, let's say, 7 years ago, but their audience has grown and evolved with them, and that their ideal client and their audience's needs and wants and desires and pain points are no longer the same because they're no longer the same. And so we're just having this disconnect in content, and you can write the best content, you can do the best live stream, you can have the best podcast, but if you're talking about things that aren't important to your audience, if you're not speaking to their needs, if you're not speaking to their problems and how you can help them solve their problems and how you can help them get the results they want, it's great content, but it's not content marketing as a strategy that's going to really help convert into clients, because there's just that disconnect. This is a stupid example, but we're going to go with it. If I suddenly evolved into, let's say, teaching people how to run ads, which I'll never do, and I'm still speaking to all my mindset stuff in business and how, because I'm sure many of you know, I am here for the strategy. Strategy is so important, so is action, but I do find mindset and learning to show up and think like a CEO and to be in your CEO role so you can run your business like a business is essential. And if that's all I was talking about, but I pivoted to teaching people about ads, like, yes, the audience set would be kind of the same. We're still talking to business owners, there's an overlap there, but there would be such a disconnect in terms of the problem I solve, how I help people, the results I help people get, what people really need to know, what my audience's needs are. It would just be very confusing. And I know this sounds so obvious, and yet when we can't see the forest for the trees always in our business. When we're really close to our own work, or when we've grown to a certain level where we're just talking about the stuff that's exciting to us or feels good to us, it's very easy to kind of miss this part, or to not see how either you or your audience has changed, grown, or evolved. The other thing that happens is, even if you're selling the same thing and your audience's needs are pretty similar, industries change, spaces change. Literally what we're talking about today, our industry in 2023 is not the same it was in 2020. And who knows what it's going to be like in the next couple of years. And so I think understanding that and coming back to, what are my people going through? What are their challenges? What are they struggling with? Where are they at? What are they really craving? What are they really wanting? What are they really going through? And remembering to bring this into your content. I know this is so simple, but it's so easy to overlook, especially if you've just been kind of in that groove where you're like, this is just the content I churn out every week, without revisiting some of these core foundational principles in business. Let me know if anyone has a question around this, or like a question on how to apply, or wants an example, or anything like that. I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but yeah, I think it's just one of those things. It's almost so self-explanatory and so basic, it's easy to ignore. And I think it's easy to ignore when you're in a place and I know because, again, I'm talking with clients all day long. I think when you're maybe struggling to bring in leads, or struggling to bring in sales, or you're finding there's a revenue gap, I think it's very easy to, and you've been creating content for a while and it's worked for you, I think it's very easy to go to, I'm doing something wrong, what am I missing, who's the guru who has the secret for me, what's the algorithm hack. I think it's just very easy to assume that's the piece to look at. And look, sometimes it's an algorithm thing. Sometimes there is something else. I mean, there's no secret, y'all. I think we all are on the same page with that. But sometimes it is simply being willing to take a look at this. And if you're not clear on the answer to this, the beautiful thing is, if you are further along in business, your audience will tell you this. If you're newer to business, the great thing is you probably have a leg up, because you are probably in the weeds in a way, in a really positive way, in which you are connecting with your people a little bit more. You're finding this information out. You're probably hopping on calls with people, doing market research. You're probably really in the place of like, I need to get this down. And it's not that you get lazy when you're further along in business. It's just easy to accept the status quo doesn't change, or just to like accept that. And I would say this is a place where I would sometimes have a client who's further along and be like, maybe we need to hop on some calls. Maybe we need to do some market research. Y'all know I gave a bunch of free sessions away at the beginning of the year. This is not why I gave them. I really wanted to put my money where my mouth was because of other challenges in our industry. But I will say what was really beneficial for me in doing those, because so many of my clients have worked with me year after year, so I don't have as many new people coming through the door on a regular basis that I'm connecting with one-on-one, it was invaluable for me in terms of market research and in terms of just getting to talk to a larger segment of people and like what's presently a challenge and problem. So I would really invite you to take a look at that if it's been a second. I know this can seem like I shouldn't have to do this anymore, or maybe it's frustrating if you're in that stage of business, but this is one of those things that will always be important in business. And I just think those foundational business principles never go out of style, and they're usually the things that make the biggest difference over some of the fancier strategies. And this is what will make any fancier strategy really work for you, because again, you can spend $1 million on ads, but if you're speaking to the wrong person, the wrong pain points, that is money you're flushing down the toilet or lighting on fire. I'm just checking for no questions. Okay, so the second thing here, I would say this is the easiest shift you can make in your content today to connect with your people more deeply. And it doesn't really require you to be a good writer or to be great on video. And it will help them to understand why you over someone else are the best person to hire. And this is picking up from what we just talked about in terms of knowing your audience. It does require you to know your people, but it's really making an effort to meet your people where they're at in their journey. So this is a huge note I give to clients when I'm reviewing content or their copy. I do this a lot for clients behind the scenes. And what I think is very easy for us to do is to want to like bombard people with all of the things, which is great. I love that we all like want to give so much value. I'm here for it. Like, I'm very much here for it. I love to give value. And when we're looking at wanting your content to really stand out and to really convert and to draw people in and understand why you are the person for them, one of the best things you can do in your content is really if we think about like old school mall maps where they used to have that little triangle where it's like you are here and then it was like the whole mall, you could figure out where you're going. Maybe they still have those. New York City doesn't have malls, so I don't really know, but maybe malls still have those. Someone has to tell me. What we want to think about is where are your people on that map versus where are all the places in the mall that they could go to. What's very easy to do is for us to start talking about the really cool store that they could go to over here, but your people are over here on the map and they have no idea how they're even going to get there. So it's like cool to listen to. They're like, that sounds like a really cool store. Whenever I can get there, whenever I'm ready for that, whenever I figure out how to get there, I would love to buy something from that store. But right now I'm here, and what I really need is some makeup from Sephora. That's right. Like, I need to just know how to get to Sephora. And so it's like we're talking about all this stuff over here, and it's like that's such a that would be so nice to have, but it's not what I need to have right now. I'm way over here, and I need to figure out how to get to my next destination for the thing I came to the mall for. So when you can figure out what that is and meet someone where they're at in their journey and really speak to that next need, what you're doing is you're really helping to build that relationship so you can meet that need, solve that need, and then help bring them to whatever your store is over here, as opposed to just trying to stay up here and hoping they're going to figure out how to get ready and meander their way to your store. I mean, if that example is making, or that analogy is making sense for y'all. And this is just, it's just such a beautiful way without like needing to have some crazy content strategy or some template you borrowed from someone else. This is just such a great way to build those relationships and have someone be like, oh, this is exactly what I need. You're speaking to that. You get me. You hear me. You understand me. You're listening to me. You're not telling me I need something else. I want to work with you. It makes such a difference. If we think about what is really powerful in sales, the number one sales skill y'all have is really being able to be quiet and to listen and to hear what people are telling you they want. And what most of us do is shut off our hearing and just spew at people and tell them what they want, and we have a disconnect. And it's the same with content. So when I know we're kind of talking at people in content, you're creating content, you're speaking to people, but when we can think about how can I listen to what people are telling me, how can I have someone really feel heard and understood and seen in my content, because I'm saying I see you, I get you, I know exactly where you're at, and I know the next place you're trying to get to, and I can tell you exactly how to get to that next easy space and make it super easy for you, and I'm not going to overwhelm you with all the other things you need. You've hit the gold mine, and you've also kept things really simple. And again, I think it's almost so obvious that we overlook this sometimes. And I would invite everyone to what I would do is take an audit of your content and just look at the content you've put out over the last month or even the last week, and to check in with, is this really meeting your people where they're at? Do you even know where they're at on the mall map? And if not, what would it look like to meet people where they're at a little bit more? And if we're always speaking to like this magical store up in the corner, how can we make sure we're speaking to that while also making sure to remember where people are at and giving them a really clear path to get there, so it feels really simple and easy for them to do? Because otherwise, again, it's not that your content isn't good, it's not that you're not really great on video, or you don't have a great podcast, you don't have great posts. It's just not speaking to what someone's current needs are in the moment. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm just seeing if I have any notes here for you. This is the other thing I wanted to say about this. So I think one of the other things to remember with this, and this is a couple things that I'll share with clients a lot. One thing I'll always ask them is, when someone first comes to you, when they first hire you, where are they at? not where are they at when they finish working with you. And this is why, again, this is almost easier if you're newer to business than if you've been creating content for a while and you've been in business for a while, because sometimes it's been a second since you've had to revisit that, which is where the disconnect can come. Where are people at when they first come to you? What are the challenges when they first come to you? What's the first store they want to go to when they come into your world? That's really what we want to speak to in content that can be so potent and really help people understand why you make sense, why your offer makes sense. The other thing I always ask clients to check in with is really checking in with unless you are your ideal client. So if you are your ideal client, this is a little bit different. But unless you are your ideal client, just really checking in when you're creating content that's more of a lesson or information. Are you sharing this because you're meeting someone where they're at and this is what they need to hear? This is what they need to know. This is what they need to understand. Like, this is what is so serving for where they're at. Or is this something you are personally super excited about? Because unless you are your ideal client, these are often very different things. If I think about what Kim is personally really excited about in business, it's not always what my ideal client, what my audience, it's not always meeting them where they're at. And so I don't want to always I'm not creating content for me. I'm creating content for you. I want to be a value and service to you, not to myself. And I really just want to be mindful and check in there. Am I meeting you where you're at, or am I meeting me where I'm at? If I'm super excited, of course, I'm always excited about all of this. I could talk about business all day long, but I really want to check in with where that's coming from and who the content is serving. And I think that sometimes we can just get confused about that, especially because, of course, all of us love our work and we get so excited about what we're learning and we want to give people everything. It doesn't mean you can't speak to other things, but if you're noticing you're having some of those connection and conversion challenges, just really be mindful, if you aren't your ideal client, to check in with them, to think about where are my people at in the mall map? What do they really need? Am I creating this for them, or am I creating this for me? And just to check in with that there. And the other piece I'll say here is, with this, is just checking in as well. Are you speaking from past experience or current experience? Meaning, if you aren't your ideal client, or if you were your ideal client, you've kind of grown or evolved past that, and not like evolved in terms of like being a better human, but just in terms of whatever their challenge points are that you're supporting them with. I would just be mindful and check in. Are you speaking through your current experience or your past experience? In terms of, you're speaking to your current experience and you're not your ideal client, it might not be the biggest connect in your content. We want to keep coming back to, who is this for? How can we help your people feel really seen, heard, and understood? That is going to change the game more than, I don't know, whether you use emojis or don't use emojis, or open your content in all capitals, or use a reel, or hop on Threads. All of that only matters if we're first clear on, do we know who we're speaking to? Are we meeting them where they're at? Are we helping someone feel heard, seen, and understood? Are we helping them see how we can get from you are here to that next place they want to get onto the map that they know they want to go to? I think that's the other piece with this, just to be mindful of. Are you speaking to where your people already know they want to go to, or are you trying to sell them on something they're not even aware they want yet? Because I would sell them on where they want to go, where they already want to go next. I think that's always going to be an easier next step in the customer and client journey. Claire, nice to see you. Hi, I've got fun people on. So questions, reflections, throw them at me. Always love to hear them. If not, I'll go on to the next one. Okay, this is my favorite. This one, I probably talk about this all the time, but it is worth revisiting here. This has never been out of style, but I think it is more important in 2023 than ever before, for all the reasons we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. And are you stepping into and owning your current level of experience? Or are you still, trying to think of how to explain this. I was saying to a client the other day, what you're doing is you're essentially wanting to have your people really like you and be like, look at how much I am like you. And she was sort of friend zoning herself in her content. And look, I'm we were just talking about connection. We were talking about having someone feel seen, heard, and understood. I am all for, I hope you all feel like you get to know me, and I want to build that know, like, and trust with people, and I want you to do that through your content as well. And I think what we need to remember with content and what we're doing in business is you are showing up as an expert to support someone with solving a problem, getting a result, reaching a desire. You're not showing up to be their friend. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I have lots of clients who I'm actually really good friends with outside of business, so don't hear this the wrong way. But in terms of what we're doing here, I mean, with all the love in the world to my best friend who I just had a 2-hour conversation with this weekend, I'm not paying her for her business advice, even though I love her, I know her, I like her, I trust her, I think she's amazing, I think she's brilliant, I think she's smart. I'm not paying her because she's my best friend. I'm paying my coach because my coach is an expert and not my friend. You know, we'll probably become friends in supporting me in my business. And there is a difference there. And so I think we want to be very mindful. I talk a lot about owning your expertise and being really clear on what is your unique edge in terms of what makes you stand out in the marketplace. I love Blue Ocean Strategy. You've heard me say this before, that Blue Ocean Strategy tells us that you don't beat the competition by trying to beat the competition, meaning as soon as you're trying to sound like everyone else and beat the competition by being the same as everybody else, you are in the bloody ocean, and it is a really challenging place, especially in 2023. Again, in 2020, that probably worked because we were in a seller's market. We're in a buyer's market now. In a buyer's market, that's a tough place to be. You don't beat the competition by trying to beat the competition. You beat the competition by not trying to beat the competition and knowing your unique edge and knowing why you are the best choice for your audience. We talked about this on the podcast this week, which I can drop a link for. This does not mean the best in the entire world. That is not even a thing. That is a lot of pressure. I don't even know that any of us could authentically own that. But understanding what your unique edge is, what makes you different from the competition, and why you are the best choice for your specific audience, which goes back to why we need to know who our people are and why we need to be able to meet them where they're at. And then really being able to own that and be in your expertise instead of what I find a lot of my clients do who are heart-centered and who maybe suffer from a little people pleasing and who want to be liked and who don't want to ruffle feathers. What they do is they water and tamper this all down so that they can be likable, so that they can be friendly, so that they can build connection. And connection is, of course, part of what we're doing. I hope I'm building connection with you here. I think I build connection very well, but there's a difference between building connection and getting friend-zoned and building connection and helping someone understand why you are uniquely the best option for them to hire. And that's really in 2023, I mean, that has always been the case. Blue Ocean Strategy has been around for a hot second, and this is not, none of this is new business information, but this is, again, in 2020, we were just in a seller's market. You could, I don't know, you could do a lot of things in air quotes wrong, and not wrong, but you didn't have to be as specific, and you could still have your business blow up. That's just not going to fly in 2023, not because you're not good enough, but simply because it's a buyer's market. And so this is one of those key components of your content that if you can make that shift and really look at where am I friend zoning myself, and instead, this doesn't mean like the opposite of friend zone is now be like untouchable or a bitch or an asshole or a bro marketer or something like that. Though to be very honest, someone needs to tell me what the issue is with bro marketers. I've been listening to some bro marketers podcasts and I really like them. So I think I'm missing something when people reference that, because I've used that term as well. I need someone to tell me what the challenge, some of the stuff I hear from them, like, that just seems like logical business strategy and sense to me. But anyway, I digress. The opposite is not now be a jerk. It's just how can you lean into your unique edge and how can you lean into your expertise and really define that in your content as why you are the best option for your people, as opposed to why you're the nicest or kindest or friendliest or most like your people. So many of my clients, I will tell them, like, I think you're just apologizing in your content. I think you're just being, you're watering down your work because you don't want to ruffle feathers, because you want people to like you, because you don't want to seem like you're saying something mean, because you want to seem like, I get it, I've been there too. And look, I get it, I've been there too. But I think there is a way we can do that from the place of, and I got you and I can help you solve this problem, versus I've been there too and I'm kind of still there too and I don't know if I can support you or I don't want you to feel bad. I think those are just two different energies you're coming from in content, and it makes a huge, huge shift. Tiffany says, oh my God, I am totally getting friend zoned. Well, hey, look, friend zoned is wonderful. And I think, I love you for saying that, Tiffany. I think just so helpful to be able to identify that and to see, great. So if that's the case, nothing wrong with you. It's not like you have a content strategy problem or a messaging problem or you're doing content wrong or people don't want to hire you. It's a simple shift where it's looking at what's going on with you being friend zone. And I'm just saying this because you mentioned it, Tiffany, but this is for everyone. I think what's helpful to look at is if this is the case, usually what I find with clients is it's one of two things, right? One is maybe it comes back to the mindset side of things. Is there something coming up where it doesn't feel okay or safe to be in that ownership of your expertise, where it feels fake, where it feels false, where it feels manipulative, where it feels wrong, where it feels like I'm not supposed to do that, where it feels too polarizing? Fill in the blank, right? Noticing what is maybe coming up there on the mindset side of things, because a lot of times, most things come back to mindset. Or is it simply hey, I didn't have clarity on this, I didn't have awareness on this. Now that I do, this is really a strategy thing. Now I know what to adjust. Let me really look for those opportunities to really step into my role as a CEO, to really get clear and identify what is that unique edge of mine. Why am I the best option for my people? What is my expertise? How can I really own that with authority and really speak to that? And what I would offer for everyone is an invitation to be polarizing. And we've talked about this in different ways. I don't want to digress and go down too many tangents, but I think it's helpful since we're on this topic. Polarizing does not mean be different for the sake of being different. Polarizing does not mean try to say things just to get people to have a shock factor. Polarizing does not mean try to say the most out there thing in the world that's just the opposite of what everyone is saying. That's not polarizing. That's not strategic. That doesn't even make sense. Oh, my hair is doing funky things. Polarizing, and what we're talking about with polarizing is really having a stance, really having a clear opinion, because you know your work so well and you know your people so well that you're very clear on what they need. You're very clear on how to support them. You're very clear on why your unique specific approach is so beneficial for them, that you're willing to speak to that. And if you're willing to speak to that, most likely it's going to be polarizing because it's going to be very clear and specific, and it's going to be targeted to a select group of people, which means there's going to be a whole other group of people that it's not specific to, that it doesn't resonate with, that might not like it, that might not agree with it, because they're not your people, because they're not where your people are at, because they don't need what your people need, because you're not actually the best option for them. You're the best option for your people. And so it's going to be polarizing for that reason. And so thinking about it that way, where it's really polarizing is just being specific to your people, not how do I be different for the sake of being different. But when you can have a really clear opinion and own it and be polarizing in that way, that is what creates magnetism. I love the example, just literally thinking about magnets. And if we think about what makes a really strong magnet that can just suck something to it, it has to be stronger repelling on one side and stronger attract, right? North and south, anyone remember science class? With magnets, we've got the north and south side. The stronger a magnet, the stronger it both attracts and repels, right? It's on both sides. And so if we want magnetic content, if you want magnetic marketing, the more polarizing, right? Also then the more attracting you are. And so if that's helpful to think about, it's really then I'm just that specific and attracting to my people. That means I got to know my people. I got to know where they're at, and I got to know why I am different, what my unique edge is, why I am the best solution for my people. And I've got to be willing to say that. I've got to be willing to own that. I've got to be willing to get out of being friend zoned and maybe not to be liked by everyone and maybe not to be everyone's friend, because I then get to serve and help them. Hope that is useful. Let me know if you have questions, thoughts on that. But yeah, friend zoned it happens. And so no one make themselves wrong if they hear that. But I think that's a helpful way to just distinguish, hey, is this the thing I could make a shift around? Let's see here. And if this is helpful to hear, again, I work with many of my clients for years and years and years. I love some of my clients. Some of my clients have become friends. I have one client who's come to the city multiple times. We hang out as friends. So you can also be friends with your client. That is not the same as being friend zone. But all of my clients who I'm also friends with, when they hire me and when we're in session, I am their coach, and sometimes they love to hate me in the moment because I am the truth teller. One of my clients the other day, she was like, I feel like I'm being dommed a little bit here. And joking, obviously. And one of my other clients jokes and will like slide under the chair. And not because I'm mean or a jerk, but because my job isn't to be their friend in session. My job is to be their coach and to really support them with what's coming up for them, with what's going on for them, to speak to some of the things maybe they don't want to hear, don't want to have to talk about, because they'd rather like be focused over here on something else. And so the same is true in your content. And seeing my clients love me for that, right? They love me for not being their friend, for being their coach, and I can also be their friend outside of session. So friend zoned, again, does not mean that it can't be both. I think just really understanding what that difference, that nuance is for your marketing and for whatever the work is everyone here does. I hope that distinction made sense, but again, if that wasn't clear, let me know, because I want to make sure I'm giving you all what you need in this. Was there anything? Oh, this is the other piece I wanted to say around this. It's a little bit of what we were talking about earlier with some of the other pieces here. But I think also checking in, especially if you are further along in business or if you've been in business for a second, do yourself a favor and revisit this, because what I think I shared this on a live stream maybe a year ago. I realized, okay, we're in 2023, 2021. I can't do maths very, very well. I can't remember at what point I hit multi-six figure. I think we've been making multi-six figures for 3 years in my business. So the first year that I crossed into multi-six figures, it's almost like it didn't register. It was probably 2020 when businesses got so busy. And so I was still owning my work. I was still in my expert role. I was still doing everything we're talking about here. But a year had passed and my business grew from like 220 to 365 or something. And not that it's about monetary results, but my team grew, my expertise grew, a lot grew. But because I was just so in the day-to-day of it, it didn't register in my mind. And a full year passed until I think it was probably my coach who was like, oh, I see what's happening. You're still acting like Kim from 2 years ago. Like this is not even caught up in your brain, that you have a different level of expertise. You have a different level of success. You have a different level of client results you're bringing to the table. And it's not because I was like not proud of it or didn't want to own it or didn't want to share it. It just, because we all are, it's sort of like anyone who's been on a fitness or health journey. Sometimes you don't see it in yourself, but then when you see someone who hasn't seen you in 6 months and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, like, you look so fit, you look so in shape, you look so different, because we don't see those incremental shifts and changes. And so the longer you've been in business, the easier that is to have happen and to have a lot of shifts in terms of what is your unique edge, what is it that you bring to the table, why are you the best for your people, what are your results, your client results, like what are all of these elements, and to almost miss them because it's just been those incremental shifts and changes. So if that's you, I would really invite you to spend some time over the next month and to see, can you spend a little journaling time to see, like, can I revisit what is my CEO identity today? What am I bringing to the table today? Why am I the best option for my people? Because it might have changed. What is my unique edge today? Like, what are some of those shifts? And if you work with a coach, check in with them on that, because that's going to also help you up level your content, again, so that you're just really communicating that with your people. And I think it's just really easy to just kind of get into the everyday, like, market, sell, serve your clients, and to forget to like take that big picture view and to notice your clients are growing, but you're growing as a business owner as well. And that's something that we want to make sure we communicate in content. So just checking in with that. If you're newer to business, think about your past business experience. Think about your past career experience. Don't sell yourself short and don't think that you don't have a unique edge or something that you can own here. If you've been in business for a little longer, just check in with, are you still kind of stuck owning you a year or two ago? And is there an opportunity to check in there and to revisit some of that? And just seeing no questions here. Okay, so I've been talking for okay. I've got 2 more here, but these are quick ones. These will be things y'all know, but that are good to have as a refresher. That I think this one, the next 2 in particular, I think are probably most relevant for 2023 as we're in a buyer's market, as we're in a more saturated space, as we're just hearing more and more of the same. So I've been talking a lot about messaging this year, and I mean, I love messaging. I love words that sell. It is one of my superpowers with clients for multiple reasons, but one of the reasons it has been so on my tongue this year is because it always matters in business. This is a foundational element of business, but when we're in a buyer's market, when it is saturated, when everybody sounds like the coach or the mentor or the program they're studying in or with, and we just have a lot of, no one's doing this on purpose, I get where this comes from, we just have a lot of regurgitation happening. It That makes it very, very challenging for you to stand out, even if you are the best in the entire world at what it is you do. It just makes it really challenging for people to actually get and understand that. And so I think the fourth one here is really revisiting your messaging, really understanding how to bring in the specifics. So we talked a little bit about this earlier with your unique edge, really looking at your content and checking in with, where can I revisit this? Where can I refine this? And specifically, where can I start to bring in specifics that sound like me, that sound like my unique edge, that sound like my zone of genius, that sound like my words, that sound like my personality, that sound like my brand? And where can I also bring in specific examples from my business, from my clients, specifics sell. I know you all know this, and look, I edit clients' content all day long. I coach clients around content and their messaging all day long. I've been doing this for 7 years. I've put out content for 7.5 years every single day, right? And I look at my own stuff sometimes. I'm like, okay, Kim, you're a little lazy on that. It's fine. You got content out, but you were pretty generic in that piece of content. Like it's not actually that specific. And so I'm saying that because it's easy to do, and especially when you've been in a busier season of business and you're just like trying to crank out that content, or your team is creating content for you, repurposing content for you. I think it's just an easy place to slip into, where it's like, is this good enough? I'm kind of checking off the checklist and getting content out there. And look, yes, that is good enough. It gets you out there, it gets you visible. And if we're looking at what's really standing out in 2023, what's really going to help you connect, what's really going to convert, it's taking everything that is a little more generic, that does maybe sound a little watered down or sound a little bit like everyone else, or just is using very generic phrasing and wording, and looking for those opportunities to bring in those specific examples and nuances to you, to your business, to your clients. And that makes all of the difference, and it does take more time. And so I just want to be very frank with that. This is not a time-saving hack. Like, that does take a little more thought. It does take a little bit more time, and that's why we don't always do it. And that's why permission, I think I always talk about how it's quantity, not quality, or through quantity you get quality. They've done studies on this. What I would offer as we're talking through all of these is, the goal of this is now not to go obsess and spend all day on one piece of content. The goal with this is to take some of these in and to keep iterating, and to know that as you create more quantity, you're going to increase your quality by the sheer practice and repetition. But I would really invite you to look at, where can you bring in those specifics, and particularly to check in with your language and to see, where are you just speaking to a lot of, not fluffy is maybe not fair, but kind of vague words, or just like industry words that everyone is using, and instead, how can you bring in something more specific? I'm trying to think of a good example here that I might, like, calling myself out. I do this all the time. So you do not need to be perfect. You can have a very successful business without doing this perfectly, and making these slight shifts goes a really long way and makes a really big difference. In fact, when we repurpose my content, this is one of the biggest things. If we take a post from 3 years ago, when things were different and you could get away with being a little more generic, and I had content that went out that was good, perfectly good content, and worked really well in 2020, but if I put it out today, it's not going to work in the same way, simply because it's not as specific. What I'm doing to rewrite that, or to revisit that, or to update that, is looking at, where can I take my kind of more generic language and just make it a little more specific? Where am I talking to build your business, grow a business that you love? Where am I speaking to, I'm just trying to think of, like, what are, make clients in cash, or to like build, grow, and scale your business? I mean, where am I just speaking to some of these generic terms in my content, instead of bringing in really specific examples to my people? Where can I instead say, hey, I know that, instead of saying, like, I can help you create content that stands out and sells and converts, where could I instead say, like, hey, I know that this year has been tough, and you have been sitting here trying to figure out what you're doing wrong with your content and why what you were doing before just like isn't getting any traction, and it feels like you're working harder than ever on your content and you're getting less reach than ever and less conversions than ever, and you're starting to wonder if maybe you smell and people don't like you and if you're going to have to shut the doors on your business. And I want to tell you that that is not the case, right? One is really generic. Is your content not converting? Are you not getting clicks? Is your content not working? I can help you sell your content and it can convert. One's generic, one's really specific. The specific one is all the things we were talking about earlier. It's because I know where you're at, I know who my people are, and I also know how I can specifically help you. So pull that out of kind of thin air, but hopefully that helps as an example. And even if you're repurposing content, it helps you see how you can take a piece of content that worked in 2020, but make it work for 2023. But just by bringing in some of those specifics. Julia says, hi Kim, looking forward to catching the replay. And I said, how do you hear? Hi. She said, I recently relaunched my first business and I find it awesome that I already have so much content, yet I definitely have to do editing and tweaking to make it even better because I've learned so much during my hiatus. I love that, and it's so this is a perfect like time for you to say that. I think this is exactly that, where most of us, if you've been in business for a second or you've taken a hiatus or if you had another business, right, we have a lot of content collateral and you get to use that. None of this is like everything has to change in 2023 and throw it all out. Literally everything I'm saying on this live stream is like coming back to business basics and things that all of us are doing all the time in business, hopefully anyway, or probably have an opportunity to do. And exactly what Julia's saying, I think the big thing is, especially if you're repurposing content. This is one of my clients and I were having this conversation the other day. She's been repurposing a lot of content because she's had a lot more on her plate, which is fine. That's what your content's for. But we were talking about how want to make sure there's some new content going out there because it can be a little rough on your audience if they keep seeing the same thing over and over again. I know even if we're offering free stuff, if I change the wrapping paper up on that, it's going to convert differently than if I just keep sharing the same thing over and over again. But one of the things we were talking about specifically is some of the pieces she's repurposing it's not that they're bad. It's not that she like created bad content. It's just they're not as specific. It is a little bit more generic. It's a little bit more fluffy. It's a little bit more what everybody else is saying. And how could she use that as, I always think of it as a SCOBY, if anyone's like, or like a starter if you make bread, like sourdough bread, but how can we use that as the starter for her so she doesn't have to like think of a whole new idea and do all the heavy lifting, and kind of use it like a Mad Libs where she's just going to go in and like zhuzh it a little bit, update it with some of those specifics so that it'll be fresh. It'll be like it's new. We knew it worked before, so it's still speaking to her audience. This is just going to speak and stand out a lot more now. Yeah, okay. I really appreciate that, Julia, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this as you watch the replay. Was there anything else I wanted to say in this here? I would say here the other thing with this, and this is just why I don't think. Not that I love me a good template. It's not that templates don't work. It's not that learning from mentors isn't important. I have a coach. I coach clients. I think there's so much room for that. But I would say specifically what we're talking about here, because it's a buyer's market and not a seller's market, because it is crowded online. Again, this is not a bad thing. There's enough for everyone to go around, but we need to help people understand when there are so many options, how each of our options are different. We go back to our mall map example. If everyone has the same storefront, it is very confusing if you go to a mall to understand which store to go into. And you kind of just are going to end up going to the first store you come across, not necessarily the best store for you. And it's extra confusing if all of the storefronts on that mall map say they're exactly the same, but they're all actually completely different with what they sell inside, right? Like what a mindfuck as a consumer. And that's a little bit of what's happening in our online space is we've just got this mall map. And there's enough people coming into the mall for every single store, except for every storefront, every banner on the storefront is saying it sells the same exact thing inside, but not everyone is actually selling the same thing inside. They're selling various bespoke forms of all these different various things behind closed door. So our opportunity is really to see how can we make sure that your storefront is matching what's in your store and helping people when they're coming into the mall understand if that is your person, they should go to your store. If it's someone else's person, they should go to another store. There's still enough to go around. There is still plenty of business happening. I have a client who's on track for their first $1 million year this year. I have plenty of clients who are scaling to multi-six figures. A client who just closed a $19K cash month. Like people are still making really great money, but we just need to make sure we're not all trying to have the same storefront. And what I would say with the piece we're talking about here with your messaging is this is just the place to check in. And if you're too close to your own content, ask a coach, ask a friend, ask someone. But especially if you've been maybe consuming a lot of content or you've been working with someone closely, I would just invite you to check in and to see, is this your own, or have you unintentionally, because you've been learning, because you've been consuming, have you unintentionally started creating a storefront that looks like the person you're learning from or that you really admire? And how instead can you make that storefront that is really yours, that's going to change everything for you? No one needs a mall with 50 stores that are the same. And I promise people want what's in your store. I promise there are people like dying to know what's in your store. We just have to tell them that. Okay, the last one here, I just need a sip of water. The last one here that I'm just going to talk on really briefly, because this is where our whole masterclass is next week. So please sign up and join me for it. It's completely free, but I want to go into this much more in depth. But this is a little bit with what we're closing here, is just really seeing that generic content it's just not cutting it anymore. I want to say it in a nice way, but it's just not cutting it anymore. We can't get away with. When I came into the online space 7 years ago, I'm pretty sure if you had just put up like other people's quotes, that would have been enough, right? And like things have just changed over time, and that's not bad. I really think it's such a gift to all of us as entrepreneurs. It might not feel like it when you're in the middle of marketing, but I think it really asks all of us as entrepreneurs to step up our game. I think it asks all of us to do the work as business owners, to get to know our people, to get to know our strength, to get to know our unique edge, to get to know why us, to learn how to communicate that, to keep revisiting our messaging, to keep revisiting our marketing, and not in this way of like, oh my gosh, it has to be so hard, but in this way of it's like, how great is that? Because then we continue to sharpen our saw, and we just get to deliver that much better service. Because if that's what we're doing, just think of then what a more refined job we're doing of bringing in the right fit clients, and then how you can serve them so much better for that reason. Anyway, I won't go off on a tangent there, but I really think this is actually a gift for all of us, and if we look at it that way, I think it can be a lot more fun. But what I would say is, what we were just talking about, how we're in the mall and there's a lot of stores that look the same. One of the easiest ways to have your content stand out in 2023, and this isn't a new thing, I just think it's with what's happening in our industry, plus with things like ChatGPT, is really incorporating strategic storytelling into your content. And I say strategic storytelling very specifically because storytelling has been around since cave days. It is one of the oldest forms of communication. So if you're curious if storytelling works, there's a reason we used it to communicate. It's how we taught, it's how we connected. It is a really powerful way. It's how our brains, if you're a coach and you do anything around mindset, right? We're always asking our clients, what's the story you're telling yourself? What story are you making about that? What are you making that mean? Our brains really work in stories. Our brains learn through stories. Our brains connect through stories. Storytelling is a very powerful vehicle for us humans in our communication, and it's really powerful for you in your marketing. And I do think there's a slight difference between telling stories and having a strategic strategy for how you're telling stories to teach people what your unique edge is and why you specifically are the best person to support them with whatever their challenge or problem is or their desire is in their business. And so what I would say is, like, simple strategy shift, start including more storytelling. Any storytelling you do is going to up-level your content. It's going to make it more specific. It's going to have your content not sound like everybody else's as soon as you bring in a story. And if you want to take it to the next level, I really invite you to start to really think about those strategic stories that help show off your unique lens, but your unique edge, and really why you specifically, and that help teach people about your business. And again, we're going to dive into this fully in depth. I have a very fun framework that I created. I've never heard someone teach this before in this way because I made it up, but I made it up because it really works. And like I said at the beginning of our live stream, it's what I've been using in my content. And we saw one post in this group. I had ChatGPT do the math. I think it was 1,300, so 1,300% increase in reach just by the strategic storytelling element. And most of my posts where I'm not being lazy and we're using this are having a 500% increase from the same content we were putting in this group previous to that by leveraging this form of strategic storytelling. So storytelling, play with it, add it in, infuse it into your content. It makes such a difference, and it makes such a difference in how you can teach and how you can build those connections. And then if you want to learn more about, I'm not saying this is like the right way or the only way. I hate that bullshit with marketing. There are lots of ways to market. There are lots of ways to do content. However, if you're specifically interested in learning how to use storytelling in a strategic way to get really known through your content and use that as the vehicle to bring in your right fit leads that turn into right fit clients, because that's what I'm all about. I don't really care if you have a massive audience or build a massive email list. I was just talking with my team about this because we had some leads coming through, and I was like, yeah, we need to be promoting somewhere else. It's great that we're getting leads, but these aren't right fit leads. I care about right fit leads for you that turn into right fit clients. That's what builds your business. That's what creates sustainability. And that's what we're going to talk about in the workshop. We're going to talk about the strategic kind of storytelling. I've created a framework that I very much have borrowed from the film, television world, that I think is really easy to grasp and understand to help you infuse that into your content so that you can both get known, but really use that as a way to get paid in your content. So I'd love to have you join me. I will, after I hop off, drop a link for that. But again, if you go to the top of the Facebook group and you click the banner, the link should be there as well. It will be in the group next Tuesday when we regularly go live, so you don't have to sign up for it, obviously, full transparency there. But if you do, you'll get the bonus playbook, which will have a bunch of journaling prompts so you can apply that framework long after the masterclass, and you'll also be entered to win a free one-on-one coaching session with me. I wish I could keep doing all of the free sessions we've been doing, like I said, but I am very fully booked, so we can't do that anymore. Or I'm going to get, I'm not going to be able to serve my clients deeply, but I can offer one of those for free. So if you sign up, we will randomly select a winner. But that's how we're going to select a winner this month, and I would love to give you then a free session. Let's see if there's any other comments. Keith says, thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. If you have questions on the replay, throw them at me. If not, I would love to see you next week for the masterclass. And then if you're like, I want to skip the masterclass and I just want one-on-one support with you, I'll drop a link for that as well. I am fully booked, but we're opening up some coaching intensives where we'll be working through this. And I don't know, if you're really, 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 really good fit, we might be able to squeeze one more spot in there. So I'll drop a discovery call link for that. But otherwise, I'll see you all next week in the masterclass. I hope this was valuable for you. Thank you all for being here. I love you all so much, and I'll see you next week. Bye.